4. In Chapter 18, we're going to talk about managing IT demand. And you might think this is like availability of IT. Do we have enough servers? Do we have enough bandwidth, etc.? But no, it's not. It's still, remember, this course is more at a managerial perspective. So we're talking about the general demand for IT services, not the day-to-day availability of applications and whatnot in the system. So if we're talking about if you're managing, planning, and producing and delivering, which is what any business does, and this is what a business has to do to balance orders and for its products and services. Remember, that's the lifeblood of the company. We have to look at the ability to maintain and do that on a current level and looking into the future. Remember, ERP systems tend to automate all of the transactions. It's replaced paper, it's replaced carbon copies and triplicate forms, and all transactions happen in the IT world. And you have the physical movement of goods and services then delivered based on the coordination of the transactions handled in an IT system, in an ERP system. So it helps organizations shape demand. It also helps them plan for demand and responds to changes in demand in the future. So this is why if someone implements SAP or Oracle or some of the other smaller ERP systems that you might look at, they tend to stick with it. And they tend to keep it maintained and up to date, because changing from one, you don't find someone changing from SAP to Oracle or Oracle to SAP. Small companies that grow into big companies may grow with their ERP system. They may have a chance to change their ERP system, but you're trying to look into the future and find out where things are going and position yourself properly. And some people want to be the first innovators, and others are afraid of making a mistake, and therefore they'll be a fast follower. So if we're thinking about this, there's an operational perspective. You got to run the business, which is the baseline demand for IT. It's that thing I said we're not going to talk a lot about. It's maintaining IT assets, which represents the demand for IT resources. It's the servers, the PCs. Is all of that stuff up to date? Do we have the proper bandwidth? Do we have the proper intranet inside the company? Do we have the proper cloud managed capacity for those things that require cloud computing? And in the world of the Internet of Things, do we have all of that planned out properly? There's a development perspective. Well, guess what? The IT world is always changing. It's always expanding. It's always morphing into something new. 10 years, before 1990, there was no idea of ERP system. ERP systems hit. Then, things like cybersecurity and data management, and then now data analytics, and who knows, CRM became all important, and who knows what will be next. So IT has to deliver the capability to enable a business to remain competitive. And whether it's a keep the lights on, are we just able to run? But it's a new channels to market. I mean, most people, this pandemic that we're in right now has forced retail stores to look at, whatever they were doing in e-commerce, they probably had to rev it up a whole 2-3 notches and their IT people had to be responsible for that. I have a little trouble with this slide because I understand, 84%, and this is a 2010 Gartner survey. It's probably, I don't know if the numbers change, but 84% of IT organizations do not have resources to meet enterprise expectations. I assume that. It doesn't say how underfunded they are or how under-resourced they are, but I think you keep it a little bit lean and hungry so that you're forced to sharpen your pencil to prioritize the activities that have to be done. That seems to be a budgeting process that works pretty well in both capital budgeting and IT budgeting. In the case of private companies, they probably don't want to spend anything on IT. They don't want to spend anything on capital either. So they're completely underfunded in these regards, um, because it's the owner's money and they can be very tight with it. So I understand this side, do more with less, or it's the supply side. Your virtualization, your data center consolidation, your benchmarking. But I'm not sure what the EG part means there. But do more with less. That's the whole purpose of using IT. You want to automate things, so you need less people. Less people, and you can do things more and more effectively and more efficiently. Do less with less? I don't follow that exactly. They're talking about demand management, IT performance management, um, IT portfolio management, running IT like a business. I'm not sure do less with less is the right answer. I think it's do more with less on the supply side and do as much as possible with less on the demand side. How about that? Do as much as possible, more effectively, more effectively. You're not going to be able to do more with less in development, but who knows? I think that's maybe where they're trying to get to. So the economics of demand management. Well, you need a system of policies and procedures, and then couple that with governance. And you want to make sure that you can allocate your scarce IT services to the highest value opportunities. I think we've been talking about this almost every week since we started this course. So what you're trying to do is prioritize demand, assign resources, and engage in projects that deliver business value. This is where the relationship between the business and IT has to be hand in hand in determining what must be done. I think at most larger corporations that do it well, this is probably what they do. So the tools for this are project portfolio management, which we've talked about, service catalog, and chargeback. I'm more familiar with the project portfolio management, not as much on the service catalog and not as much on the chargeback. So when we talk about this PPM, the project portfolio management, we're talking about processes that are designed to do this prioritization. I've talked about how we want IT budgeting to mirror capital budgeting and it's really hand in hand, kind of run by finance, IT, and the business all together. So I like to say it results in multi-year forecasts of IT spending. Multi-year may be just 2 years, at least in my experience, and my experience is, again, probably 10 years old. So you want to make sure that you have, and they don't talk ROI, but I think a lot of companies do talk ROI in this regard. Service catalog. So there are certain things that you want IT to do. If you can put them into, we need IT to do this, that, or the other thing, you could have a catalog, an online catalog where if you need these services, you could pay for it. And sometimes you have an outside service actually managing those. I think these latter two things, the service catalog and a chargeback, are designed for outsourcing these aspects of IT demand management. So it's, they look at a price per unit for the various offerings that they may do, and what kind of things are we talking about? We're talking about if you need a new laptop, if you need a new server in your particular division, if you need some software enhancement, or you need some data analytics work, or you need this, that, the other thing, you may be able to go to the catalog and do these kinds of littler things easier. That new application on all iPhones, tied to the cloud and secured, so that people can then use this app wherever they are in whatever function they're working in. So you have to know what is available and what it costs to allow business managers to make informed decisions. In the last company I worked for, rather than have a service catalog, they gave for some of these things, they gave a small budget to the operating units where they could do these kinds of things kind of on their own and locally. rather than centrally. But they want to keep track of it too. You want to make sure you account for it, that you're not overspending. And where you can get contracts internationally or nationally for services, you go get them. So the chargeback. This is where, as IT can be a cost center and not necessarily a profit center, all of their charges are allocated as you would overhead to various business units based on the volume of their sales, for example. So if it's overhead, viewed as overhead or non-variable overhead, you want to charge these back to the profit centers. They're paying for them anyway. So key organizational enablers for effective demand management. There's 5 of them. And we've talked about a lot of these. Strategic initiative management, application portfolio management, enterprise architecture, business IT relationship, governance, and transparency. In fact, I'm pretty sure we've done a lot of those. So the demand management tools are underlying all of this. So project portfolio management, service, and chargeback. So strategic initiative management. Well, we've talked about this. You want to make sure that you're prioritizing and funding IT investments at the enterprise level, at the company level. If it's an international company, it's at the global level. If it's a national company, it's at the national level. If you don't do this, you're not really aligning your IT investments with your corporate strategy. And the problem with many small companies is they don't really have a corporate strategy that they've articulated in any way other than to make money this year. And that involves sell as much as you can and don't spend so much. That's not much of a strategy, where you want to be, where you want to grow, how do you want to grow. But I think these 2 things go hand in hand, and I think we've talked about them a lot. Application portfolio management. So we're talking about our existing applications and balancing the expense versus the value these things give. The value could be, obviously corporate profitability, but also there's non-financial measures such as usability and technical obsolescence. If, what's the value in changing your roof? None, but you cost avoid having the roof start leaking and do secondary damage, which makes the cost of replacing the roof even more expensive. Sometimes you just have to replace stuff because they become obsolete. I think of our one student that uses a software that's attached to QuickBooks, and their company is using an outdated, unsupported model. This is exactly what we're talking about here. The portfolio can be effective at reducing overall demand as well as reshaping it. You want to find out what you got and what you're going to need, and hopefully the software companies that you've already invested and bought their products in, you've invested in those companies by buying their products. They're the companies that are kind of leading and have that longevity and adding the latest capabilities to their offering. I think SAP and Oracle both do this. A lot of the smaller ERP systems do this. A lot of the third-party systems come up with the new capabilities, and then larger companies like SAP and Oracle may buy them and integrate that technology into their systems. So enterprise architecture. So if we're talking about a holistic view of an organization's strategy, processes, information, and IT assets, this is probably more in the realm of IT, but they still have to do this in coordination with the business. Because then the very next point is combined with effective governance and transparency. When you do that, this mechanism is highly effective at helping IT know where they have to go. And I think some companies do it very well. I would give as an example there the previous company, the last second to last corporation I worked for, Colgate Palmolive. They have done a very, very good job of partnering with SAP and helping to guide. If you're talking about SAP being a company that provides IT, they also need business partners to help them shape where they want to take their product. And Colgate has done a very good job of partnering with SAP to get things for less and get things first. And I think that's been a very effective strategy for them. So business IT partnership within a company, we've beat this to death. There's 3 levels of it, I guess they're talking about here. If you're going to manage your IT demand effectively, it has to be a business IT partnership, and you have a utility partner, keeping operations running effectively as possible. Well, guess what? Nothing gets everyone's attention more than our systems are down, we can't process orders today. You have to keep operations running. That's the first primary goal of any IT. If you don't do that, and you keep having problems and aren't able to solve them, you're out. They'll replace you with someone that can do it. It'll become a mini case study in the next edition of this book. Technology partner. So where's the market going? How is IT going to help us meet where the market's going, perhaps ahead of our competitors? So you want that partner. IT has to be a technology partner with the business. And then the business partner has to do the opposite. They have to focus IT where to go while focusing on business results. So while they're looking at business results, I need IT tools that can help me get my business results today and achieve those business results tomorrow. So what is involved here when we talk about effective demand management? Well, relationship management, leadership, clear business requirements, marketing skills. Marketing skills are involved. There's a certain salesmanship. If you're looking at the IT portfolio, the project portfolio management, do the most useful ideas and most valuable ideas get done first? Generally, yes. But when there's a tie between 2 different functional areas that are looking at trying to do something and there's limited budget, it's the one with the most marketing skills in their presentation that can sell their project better. So let's not fool ourselves into thinking the slick presentation, all things else being equal, wins the day. Governance and transparency. Well, this is the process we've been talking about a lot. Vetting IT project proposals, that basic business case that we just talked about. You need to market it as well as just make the case, state the case in black and white. So business has to pay for new developments as well as a pro rata share of technology costs to run the business. That's the chargeback we've been talking about. These 2 forms of governance shape the demand for IT resources. So how do you govern that? I still think, and as I've said from the beginning, the best way to do this is it's a financial process. It's run by the financial people who are really good at budget and both operational budgeting and capital budgeting. And I would create another bucket called IT budgeting, which should mirror the capital budgeting. I sound like a broken record, don't I? Initiatives for an effective governance. The best practice is kind of adoption of a standard business case template. Well, you don't want to see, while marketing is important, you don't want to see a different presentation in a different format every time. Making sure all the business managers are good at knowing how to develop a case for getting this done. People know how to do it for capital budgeting well before they knew how to do it for IT budgeting because they've been trained over the years, not necessarily formal training, but just from experience. The finance organization sign off on the acceptability of benefits proposed. Well, yes, they kick the tires on it. And usually, as I've mentioned before, business units tend to have a finance person and an IT person assigned to them. So you're doing it in a three-legged stool. You have your business reasons for doing it. You have the IT partnership within your own group of what can be done, what needs to be done, what's out there, what solution are we possibly proposing. And then third is the financial oversight and making sure that all the numbers are proper. Then, if you've promised a certain ROI, you got to track and make sure that you get that ROI. If you're really good at marketing but never deliver the ROI, eventually that will catch up with you, and your projects will not get funded as often as they were. So governance and transparency continued. It has to be a well-defined process, and everybody adheres to it. And in fact, when they're doing it, mostly it's done in a concerted time frame where everybody that cares to be is in the same room, seeing which projects are getting funded and which aren't, and why. And then you create that organizational knowledge of how to manage this and get your project approved. And it might require going back to the drawing board and reassessing what it is you're trying to do and the impact that you're trying to get. So information needs to be consistent, reliable, and so it can be interpreted. What needs to be consistent? You've got to have a clear case when you present. You've got to have a stated ROI, and then you've got to deliver on the ROI. I think those are the three things that probably make this thing work the best. So in conclusion, IT demand is not a single process, but rather a developed organizational capability. It's a large process, a system of or a series of processes, a collection of processes, but it really is designed to develop that organizational capability. It has some basic tools. We talked about those. Working in concert with the 5 organizational enablers. And you want it to be in organizations where you want your IT folks to be recognized for their strategic importance, and that requires that the IT processes have reached a level of maturity. So that your IT people are in fact an equal, valued partner of both business side on the business side, and you have the proper processes in place, then you're starting to really get that effective IT performance and effective IT demand management that we're talking about here. Thank you very much. We'll talk again soon.